morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Thank you for choosing to spend your Friday morning with me. We're going to talk about preparing Illinois for the AI economy. Do a quick intro of who I am. I'm Jeff. I'm currently Vice President at Jobs for the Future. My remit includes overseeing our Center for Career Navigation, which is focusing on helping young people 16 to 24-year-olds make good, informed decisions about their education and career pathways. I'm also leading some work in the state of Illinois, as well as thinking about some of our products at Jobs for the Future. Before joining JFF, I started my career as a high school social worker, then moved on to academia for a bit, and then most recently was at Amazon in a variety of talent management, workforce roles. The most recent being I oversaw the education and coaching for the Career Choice Education Benefit, where the goal was to upskill frontline workers in the fulfillment centers to get better jobs outside of Amazon. So, quick question. How many of you are familiar with Jobs for the Future? Okay, a good number. So JFF is a national intermediary. We've been around for about 40 years. I'm really focused on helping states, institutions, post-secondary institutions, employers transform workforce and education systems so that we're building a future that works for everyone. Our North Star is that by 2033, that 75 million individuals with barriers to economic advancement will land in quality jobs. And JFF has a very specific set of metrics around what a quality job is. Before I jump into the presentation, I know there's been a lot of discussion on AI, and I'm going to try not to repeat some of the talking points that showed up in the larger sessions yesterday. But I'm wondering, just a couple of people in the room, what's top of mind for you all? What worries are you seeing amongst your workers, learners, amongst yourselves as it relates to AI? Job loss. Definitely. Loss of critical thinking skills, for sure. Accuracy.
Potentially specifically taking entry-level positions, which are needed for a large population that we deal with.
Great. So potentially the disappearance of entry-level jobs which are needed for our target population. We're going to touch on all of those. I'm not going to have the answer, but the thesis is we need to take a systems-level approach to make sure that AI is a benefit for all. And so with that, we'll lead with a little bit on JFF's view on AI and the future of work. Certainly, we see AI as being a transformative force in workforce and education. There's a lot of promise, but then there's also a number of limitations and risks. Top of mind are the ones that were just listed off. And so we recognize that AI is transforming work. It will transform most jobs. We're not necessarily looking at, our framework isn't necessarily that jobs are going to disappear. Some may, but we're primarily focused now on looking at how tasks within jobs are evolving as a result of AI. We're also paying attention to how human skills are being elevated, and then there's this risk, as mentioned earlier, of critical thinking going down as people become more and more reliant on AI. What happens next is a choice. So again, AI could really mobilize and create a better future for all, or there could be real detrimental impacts. But with the right policies and programs in place, we believe that AI can improve job quality and expand opportunity, but without them, there's a real risk of it widening existing racial, gender, regional inequities. And then to that point, we need a systems level response to build skills first, job quality, equity-focused ecosystems. So that's where all of the stakeholders in the Learn to Work ecosystem need to come together to strategize on this. Workforce boards, community colleges, 4 years, adult ed, employers, economic developers, and so on, to make sure that people, businesses, and communities are AI ready. In terms of what's upcoming, how we're going to spend the next 50 minutes, I'm going to introduce a couple frameworks that we've been using in how we're paying attention to how jobs are evolving. And then I'm going to share some findings from a national study that we did with learners and workers on their perceptions of AI. We boosted the sample in Illinois, so I'm going to be able to speak specifically on how Illinoisans are thinking about AI. And then we'll talk about some implications, and then hopefully have some time for some Q&A and hear all the great work that you are doing in this space as well. So we'll lead with headlines that I'm sure we're all familiar with. Anybody that's scrolling LinkedIn or Yahoo are seeing these dire headlines of heads being cut, the bottom rung of the career ladder breaking, so forth. So a lot of anxiety out there, a lot of uncertainty out there for sure. What we do know for sure is that job posting data confirms that employers want more AI and durable skills. So in an analysis of job posting, and this is both technical and non-technical roles, year over year, significant increase in the mention of AI in those postings, but also an increase in durable skills. And we're also, I'm sure, familiar with all the headlines on what employers are saying about Gen Z and their lack of durable skills. So I think that's something that they may be indexing on as well with job postings. So what we know to be true is the market is saying, like, even roles that were historically not tech adjacent are increasingly having expectations around at least baseline AI familiarity. AI is poised for dramatic, potentially inequitable impact on workforce. So a couple stats here. 85% of the US workforce could see at least 10% of their tasks affected by Gen AI. 42% of work tasks could be automated by AI. 12 million workers may need to change jobs by 2030 due to shrinking demand. And then some equity considerations. 36% of female workers are in occupations susceptible to automation compared to 25% of male workers. This is a stat that came out through a recent article from Brookings and Opportunity at Work. 11 million workers without 4-year degrees are in gateway jobs that are exposed to AI. And so the gateway jobs are those entry-level jobs that create the pathway to the destination job, the higher wage job. And so as we're thinking about the impact, we not only want to look at the impact of AI on specific roles, but what does that mean for the career pathways that lead to quality jobs? And it's really important to think about how are we protecting folks as they're moving through work versus a specific job or a specific landing point. And then lastly, 20% of individuals without a college degree had used AI at work versus 40% with a bachelor's degree. So again, just that exposure and being able to develop AI skills in a work environment. All right, now I'm going to introduce JFF's AI Ready Workforce Framework. And what I'd say, I'm just gonna kind of like touch the tip of the iceberg with this presentation. In the PowerPoint that I uploaded to the app, there's resources where you could dive in more deeply into this. This is much more complex than what I'm presenting here, but wanted to give a high level in terms of how we're thinking about how jobs are transforming as a result of AI. And so we're looking at this from a lens of both the job title, how is that changing, but also paying a lot of attention to how tasks within the job are changing as a result of AI. And how we've applied this framework is we've done some advisory to employers to help them think about track roles, how are roles evolving, how are they changing, what are ways that they could protect their employees or pivot their employees whose core tasks are being impacted by AI. So if we go to the upper corner, elevate, from the worker's perspective, when skills are elevated, it's a shift in my value towards higher level human capability. So AI increases the value of human and interpersonal skills. It gets amplified, it gets added to an existing job. So think of elevate, like this new human capability is now added to my job. An example of that may be a customer service agent who before was just dealing with routine requests, FAQs. Now they're handling escalations that require greater critical thinking, greater relationship management with clients, customers. So that is now their tasks are being elevated. Similarly, a senior software developer, now that AI is taking care of supporting them with coding, they may be taking a more strategic view of the architecture. And so fundamentally, their tasks are being elevated. Augmented means that AI is helping the individual do their current job better. So the fundamental workflow tasks of the current job are staying the same, but AI is helping them be more efficient or do it better. And so that is reviewing emails that go out, a note taker taking notes. If you're a career navigator, a career coach, again, having a AI tool to help you with your case notes or with scheduling. So AI is supporting those existing tasks, helping you do them better. Complement, AI is bringing a set of capabilities that the worker doesn't have. So this is AI and the human working hand in hand, not necessarily taking on, supporting a new, or helping them do their current task better. So some examples here, manufacturing technician may have AI-powered predictive maintenance tool that helps them with that. Or again, if you're a career navigator, you may have an AI-powered career exploration tool that helps bring in real-time labor market data that you wouldn't have access to. Displaced, and this is where we start getting concerned about our workers. In this case, the worker's experience is my work disappears. So I still have my job, but some parts of my job are disappearing, and it's going to have to evolve. So examples here, note-taking for an administrative assistant. So note-taking historically has been a core job of an admin. Now AI takes that. So how does that admin's role get structured in a way that they add new tasks to it? This could also be AI taking on manual scheduling. So now it's not the manager at McDonald's that has to schedule every shift. AI tool is able to do that. So manager shifts that time to other responsibilities that are hopefully value add for the business. And then finally, we're at replaced. This is where all the concerns are. AI takes over the job. So the worker's experience is my work disappears. And so this may be some of the frontline customer service agents. A couple of examples of how this may work and even evolve. So thinking about my days at Amazon. 20 years ago in the fulfillment centers, there were fulfillment center associates called pickers who ran around the fulfillment center getting orders for folks. So you order a box of Kleenex, they're running around getting that box of Kleenex and moving it along the workflow to eventually get shipped to you. Those associates sometimes were running 15 miles a day around the fulfillment centers. Robots were introduced, I think, in 2012, and then pickers, instead of running around, were stationary. The robots brought over the different cupboards of items, and then the picker now just grabs the Kleenex out of this cupboard and puts it into the assembly line. And so in that case, the task of running around the fulfillment center was displaced by AI. Now, there's a real risk of that associate in 5, 10, 15 years being replaced, where you no longer need a human to pick that box of Kleenex and put it into the next assembly line. Other examples, again, like the experience could be different as AI takes over different tasks. Note-taking, again, for me, like, it saves me time. It augments my role because now when I have one-on-ones with my direct reports, I don't have to send a summary afterwards. Fireflies is able to do that. It becomes an issue of displacement for an administrative assistant. Similarly, with AI coding, that senior software development architect, their skills are actually being elevated because they're able to focus on strategic architecture. Junior developer may be displaced or replaced. I know this is super, super complicated, so I want to open up if there's any clarifying questions on this. No? Yeah, sure.
You talk about human support, machine support. Along the way, I feel that people have different types of uses for AI. So if you go apply for a job, AI is required. How are we gonna tap into that? Oh, okay, you're good, you're not good.
Yeah, so
Sorry, it's just very, it just gets more and more. I used to go to school I graduated with graphic arts.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've been seeing that, when I went to school, it was a thing, and I thought I was going to graduate, I was going to do great things with my degree. And AI comes, and now everybody's using Canva, and, it's like, there goes my job.
Yeah.
So, in just a matter of years, so it's like, how do we look at that now? Because I went to school, I did all that, and now all I have to know is just how to add a prompt.
Yeah, absolutely. That actually, the question was, how do we react as AI slowly displaces those tasks or replaces those tasks? And then I think also under that is understanding when a job description mentions AI, what does that actually mean? That's a great transition to this other framework. A couple weeks ago, I was talking to some training providers, and they were asking how very similar question of how should we be preparing our learners to be effective in the labor market, knowing how quickly things are changing. And so here's a skill stack. Also, I could also see this as an equation of durable skills plus domain skills plus AI foundations plus AI in sector as the equation that gets you there. But fundamentally, the idea is, we need to build up those durable skills. And so it's also on us to, as those of you that are educators in training programs, making sure that learners are not just using AI, but using it with a very critical lens instead of just prompting and getting content and handing it in, really being able to evaluate it, really teaching learners how to engage with AI, how to question AI, how to ask AI for direct feedback, all of those pieces that are really critical on top of core communication skills. Then next in this equation is the core domain and technical skills. The X in here is whatever the sector or role is, right? So if you're in healthcare, understanding clinical procedures, that's still critical. Understanding anatomy and physiology, still critical. If you're a career navigator, understanding the best assessments to use, critical. Understanding eligibility rules. Then there's AI foundations. There's yesterday in the starting session, there was reference to the Department of Labor AI framework. There's many different frameworks, but this is basic AI literacy, how to prompt, how to use information secure, AI 101. Then the next layer, and this is the most complicated one, is what does AI applied to that specific job or to that specific sector look like? And that becomes a role-by-role analysis. What becomes really tricky is how quickly it evolves. So in here, it's the nurse, AI, scribe tools for taking notes. If you're a career navigator, again, what are the AI pathways tools that you can use in your practice? So this is one way of looking at it. I think there's also a piece in terms of thinking about our training framework paradigm of how much is the responsibility of the education institution or education training provider versus the employer, right? So I'd argue that, community colleges, training providers, 4 years need to stay on top of how is AI changing the day-to-day at a macro level in these different roles, but then fundamentally employers are going to be responsible for that last mile training because so many employers have different tools or processes that they're going to have to upskill their particular employees on. All right, so going to shift gears a bit now, and sorry if this is an abrupt shift, was trying to figure out how to put all of this together into one cohesive hour, but want to shift a little bit to what, oh yes, sir.
I do have a question before.
Oh, please. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, can we have you speak into a microphone? So sorry, the virtual attendees can't hear. Sorry.
Yeah, she's bringing a microphone.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
I don't need one. I speak very loud.
I know, but the virtual attendees can't hear you.
Oh, that's fine. I'm sorry. My name's Tom Pinnell. I work at IDS at the unemployment office here in Peoria. Mm-hmm. Our vast majority of our people that come into IDS that are looking for jobs are warehouse people, are people that want to work from home, such as the people that do the transcribing. These people are taking a very valuable job and going with it. They don't want to go to college. They don't want to do that. And what are our options? Because if you start taking away the low functioning jobs or the ones that are lower paid that people take, what's your plans for them?
Yeah, agreed. That is something, again, I think the biggest risk with this, the potential impact on of AI, I think that's where it becomes really, and you'll at the very end, I'll talk about the role of employers and the need for some extrinsic motivation for employers to look out for these employees, right? And that's got to come from policy when employers don't necessarily have that intrinsic motivation. Now, what I could tell you, as an example, and Amazon has a reputation. What I'll say is the intention of the career choice program, I think, could be an exemplar of that. So my remit was to help our fulfillment center employees that tapped out at $20 an hour, because at the time that was the max pay that you could get as a frontline associate, identify what roles in the region had a wage gain beyond that $20 an hour, and then we customized training, including bringing it into the fulfillment center, and we were responsible for outskilling, so connecting with employers to outskill. So I think more employers need to think about that, especially as jobs get replaced. All right, great question. All right, so moving on to our AI study. As mentioned, we've done this a couple of years now to understand perceptions of workers and learners around the topic of AI. Most of the data I'm going to point to are specific to residents of Illinois. We did get a nationally or a representative sample across sectors, regions, age, so we're confident in the statistics behind what I'm going to share with you. A couple of the slides, there's comparators with the national sample as well. So this first set of questions is really interesting. We asked unprompted about folks' awareness of AI. So how familiar are you with the concept of AI? In response to that, 81% of Illinois respondents said, yes, I'm familiar with AI, I know what it is. There were some discrepancies. Illinois males, 86%, were more likely than female, 76% to be aware of AI. And then, probably unsurprising, familiarity was highest amongst younger folks, 91% for 16 to 34-year-olds versus 65% for those 55 and older. What's super interesting is later on in the survey, we gave them a prompt of what AI was. Not super technical, a 2 to 3 sentence description of what AI was. Then we asked them, based on this text, this description of AI, how familiar are you with AI? The numbers dropped significantly from 81% to 54%. So that shows there's a lot of folks that think they know what AI is, but they actually don't know what AI is. So that's a starting point in terms of when you're meeting with workers and learners of, even if it is not assuming that they know what AI is and being able to explain it in a very simple way. Now this is national data. People are feeling the impacts of AI, and negative sentiment around AI is on the rise. So 66% of respondents claimed AI tools were having at least some impact on their jobs. That's compared to 57% in 2024, so almost a 10% increase over a year. 45% of respondents selected job displacement or changes to work and wages as one of their top 3 concerns around AI. So again, a lot of people are sitting with anxiety and uncertainty around it. Related, there was a 10-point drop in optimism. So more respondents felt that AI was doing more harm than good across society as a whole, a reversal from 2024. So again, just as starting points of where people are at when you have these conversations about AI. Double clicking into Illinois, a majority of Illinois residents, 54%, felt that AI tools were having some impact or a great deal of impact on their jobs. The overall total is 9% less than the total sample due to fewer Illinois considering it'll have a great deal of impact. Looking at future impact, 66% claim that AI tools will have an impact on the job or career they expect to have in the next 3 to 5 years. This is a very busy slide, but the main takeaway, we asked what are their primary concerns around AI. Top concern was overall reliance on AI or loss of human control oversight of AI. Job displacement, of course, almost half of our respondents were concerned about that. And then security and privacy risks were also top of mind. I also know that's top of mind for many of you as you're thinking about using AI tools in your practice as well. All right, so now is when we're gonna start connecting dots. So we know that folks are worried about AI's impact on their job. They're already seeing those changes. As a result, almost half of the Illinoisans surveyed feel the need to gain new skills as a result of the impact of AI on their work or education. Again, big age discrepancy, 70% of those aged 16 to 34 felt a need to upskill, more than 3 times as many of those 55 and older. Then we asked, how are you learning about AI? Surprising, or maybe not surprising, the top answer was YouTube videos, social media. So there's a lot of DIY AI training, upskilling. This is a big theme that we're seeing is just there's this solution sprawl of AI products, AI upskilling, and it's hard to judge what's credible, what's not, which YouTube video to pick. There's no guide around that, and we're increasingly seeing that as a need of like some sort of clearinghouse of content tools so that we can direct folks to the most valuable tools for upskilling. The next most common was experimenting on their own with different tools. I'd contextualize this by saying that I think it was around 14% of respondents had stated that they paid for AI tools. So when the majority of these individuals are experimenting with different tools, it's the open access free versions. Taking an online course, many of which are open access and don't require payment, the Coursera, Google's Open AI Academy, and then it decreases to only about 12% have actually paid for a course to learn AI. Some barriers to learning AI. Again, we see almost half of respondents have the motivation, have the interest in learning more about AI, but some blockers are limited time for learning, high cost, difficulty finding reliable information. They get overwhelmed and then say, forget it. My employer hasn't offered training on how to use AI. We're gonna double click into that one as well. And so over 2/3 of Illinoisans have not been consulted by employers about the use of AI tools, right? So even though over half of the respondents are seeing their job tasks being impacted by AI, employers aren't talking to them about it. And so 67% said, no, my employer has never consulted me about how AI tools are or should be used at work. 19% said they're actively involved in how AI tools are being used at work. And then 13% are saying that their employers are actually asking for their feedback on how it's impacting them. And so we're also seeing that, again, in some of the headlines of employers reducing their workforce and then saying, oopsie, and then hiring them back when they see that AI is not working as anticipated. And a lot of that, I would argue, is because they're not incorporating worker voice into how they're pushing AI out, or they're not like taking a very intentional approach by mapping out the tasks for different jobs. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that Sally did X, Y, Z instead of, and beyond note taking or generating emails. And then the other clear need for a call to action, just over a quarter of Illinoisans were offered AI training from their employers. So again, connecting the dots here, we're seeing jobs are changing as a result of AI. 66% of workers are worried about how AI is going to impact their job. Over half want to learn more about AI. They're doing it themselves, and employers aren't supporting. So there's a clear opportunity here for a systems level approach to address this upskilling issue. Then one more, 28% of Illinoisans had changed or were planning to change their career plans as a result of AI. And again, we see this greatest concentration in 16 to 34-year-olds, a slight drop for 35 to 54-year-olds, and then only about 8% of 55-year-olds felt that they're going to need to significantly pivot their career. All right, so that's where workers and learners are. Maybe I'll open up for a conversation for a couple minutes, and then I have some slides on implications of this, but I'm really curious to see if these findings resonate with what you're seeing. Was there anything surprising?
Yes, it resonates. I'm wondering how we react to it, though. So are you aware of tools or data sources to help us determine what AI tools or what AI content should be incorporated into some of the training programs that we work with? So there's a lot of clean energy training, for example, so like a home energy auditor seems like something. And so where do we find materials to help us sort of transform the training?
That's where there's a very clear gap, and I think there's a couple of things that we need to address, and I've already flagged this to the leader of JFF Center for AI is I do believe we need some version of a clearinghouse, because there are so many solutions, so that there's an easy place, think of the Amazon marketplace, but with more rigor, to how you can assess what are the best foundational tools. Should you recommend the new AI tool that the Department of Labor released last month or a month before, or are there other opportunities? I think so there's the solution sprawl and just figuring out what to choose from. And then I think the other complexity is this issue of needing employers to support with the last mile training, because employers use, there's not a consistent set of AI tools across hospital systems or across manufacturing, right? And so needing to, I think training providers need to be aware of the most commonly used and introduce those in the training course. And so that's got to be a regular survey that training providers are asking their employer partners, so that they're staying abreast of new technology. But then also making sure that employers are providing that training on their preferred tools and use cases.
Thank you. My question was a little bit about the clearinghouse. It makes me think of, back in the day when you'd have to have a crosswalk for individuals that were coming out of the military, and to find out what they did and how do we refer to that in civilian terms. Is there anything out there like a crosswalk of, this is a current job description and these are the tasks that AI will, within the next year, either augment or, go down your slide. So that's one question. The other question I have for you is I did see in the slides, maybe I walked away with the wrong impression, but it looked like females were, trailing behind with regards to keeping up with AI, at least currently. And I was just wondering if your data or research had any insights on that.
Yeah. So the first question, actually in the resources I included in the deck, in the past 2 months, there have been 3 or 4 different solutions around what you just mentioned of like looking at roles and seeing the AI exposure impact. Like my general sense is same wine, different bottles. So you can, so test which user experience you like the most, but that's included in the back of the deck. So check it out. I think I have 4 different versions of that where they look at occupation again, like different lenses, different user experience, but I think you'd be really interested in that. The second question, we still need to double click into the gender discrepancy. Part of it may be because we're also seeing the impact on roles that females tend to, the admin assistant type roles. So that may be a part of why we saw that discrepancy.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I was just curious if you know on the state level in legislation, if there are any talks or about regulating AI or making sure that it's used ethically so that we don't kind of miss the boat on it like we did with social media.
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I know that there was an AI machine learning working group that I think that put out a report last year or the year before. But I'm not up to date on the most specific legislation at the state level. I know that there's thinking and I'm not sure if a working group has been created or is in the works of being created, but thinking about the intersection of AI and workforce specifically. But that's definitely something that I think there are models in Ohio and Michigan where Illinois is lagging a bit. All right, I'm going to shift to some implications and then happy to open it up with our remaining time. So as we think about what next, how do we make sure that AI makes a better economy for all? We need to close the AI access and equity gap through targeted outreach. I'd say part of this is also figuring out what is the right amount of information that someone needs based on their job, their goals, and so forth. So this isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all. Everybody should take the DOL AI training, and then we've checked this one off. But it requires more intentionality, and but the intent here, again, isn't to take non-technical workers to become AI coders, but it's to take non-technical workers to give that base level of AI. Even if it's for AI to support them with their own job seeking or to support them with their daily life. And then thinking about what are the tasks of my job that are going to be impacted by AI or the tasks of my destination job so that they could be intentional in that upskilling plan. The next is shift AI learning from informal to supported pathways. So again, right now we're in the state of many workers and learners. It's a free-for-all, pick your favorite YouTube video. If there's, a short video on Instagram, whatnot, figure out how do we add more structure to that, as well as we've already talked about the rapid proliferation of different AI upskilling solutions, how to help learners make sense of those. Integrate AI skills into workforce and education systems at scale. Certainly, I think post-secondary institutions are doing more and more of this. But again, figuring out it's more than just teaching someone how to make a good prompt in ChatGPT. ChatGPT could actually build that prompt, right? It's actually more effective if they know how to coach ChatGPT in generating a prompt and then using that prompt. So post-secondary institutions, training providers need to stay aware of how are AI tools evolving. So that's where employer advisory councils are really, really important in terms of providing that feedback loop, as well as the increasing importance of work-based learning and incorporating AI through those work-based learning experiences so that learners see AI in that workflow instead of a theoretical application. I'd say the other piece here that we need to think about on a systems level is what does a lifelong learning infrastructure look like? We've moved past the days of high school, college, or other training, and then work till you retire. And maybe you get some, CEUs or some upskilling with your employer, where there's this push for ongoing lifelong learning. How do we make that affordable for folks? Can folks, we shouldn't expect folks to invest $5, $10K every year, every other year to upskill as technology changes. So really thinking about what does that lifelong infrastructure look like? And does it segue to is that part of the employer's responsibility? So I had mentioned before, employers are critical for all of this. They're going to determine whether or not AI makes or breaks our most vulnerable population of workers. And so I'd argue we need both extrinsic motivation through policy incentives, as well as just advocacy from us as customers of those employers, while also leaning into best practices of companies that have shown goodwill, intrinsic motivation to build career pathways for folks to invest in early talent. The next big consideration, any of you that work with young people know the anxiety that they're experiencing. Last year, we hired some youth researchers to do a study on how young people use social media to navigate their career. The most common theme that emerged from analyzing thousands of posts and conversations online amongst young people was the concept of "I'm cooked." And so this feeling I don't know what to do. I can't get a job without experience. I can't get experience without a job. There are no jobs there. I don't know what people are looking for. I don't have the skills on this job description. What should I do? So a lot of young people are feeling cooked. I recently read a focus group, I think it was in the New York Times, where young people were talking about the labor market as a scam, messy. So that's where young people are right now. A lot of anxiety, uncertainty. And so we need to make sure that that all young people have that AI literacy. Again, a huge equity issue in terms of access to the highest quality upskilling tools in K-12. Really leaning into work-based learning and being able to see how AI gets applied on the job. And then, of course, continuing the and then building adaptive confidence. And so again, going back to the metacognitive training that we need to provide young people, but the belief that they can learn new skills and adapt as work changes, and again, paying attention at these task level responsibilities and how upskilling may be necessary. And then the last piece that I'd add is build a AI navigation layer. So both AI navigation layer helping workers leverage AI for job seeking and career exploration. One of the findings from the survey that I didn't include in here that I was actually really shocked at was only about 18% of respondents reported using AI tools for their job search, whether it's helping them with resume or cover letters. And so that again could be a real equity issue of folks that are using AI to build their resume. I think the other piece to it, right, and this is getting into the critical thinking, is it's not just using ChatGPT to generate some resume bullet points, but then how do you de-AIfy it, right? So like removing the M dashes, right? Like think about like the content when you read it. If you're ever like a hiring manager and read cover letters, I could tell in seconds whether it was just ChatGPT generated, and for better or worse, like put a judgment towards that. Because it's like you could, at least I'm fine with it being a starting point, but do some customization versus the clear, a lot of dashes, like the parallel structure, all of those. Again, like that's the critical thinking that a lot of folks that are using AI haven't considered yet. One resource, and then I'm gonna open it back up for any last thoughts that wanted to highlight that I think could be useful for you if you're working directly with workers. About a year and a half ago, JFF put out a thought leadership piece on use cases for generative AI for job seekers, and we took a jobs to be done approach to it. So walking through the workflow of getting a job from like helping me find a career that I'm interested in to helping me succeed in my job. And part of this was also a market scan. So again, this needs to be, this is already probably outdated, but this is the start of the clearinghouse that I recommended. At least it pulls together some of the existing solutions. There's not necessarily judgment on those or like specific recommendations, but as a starting point, and then would also flag that there are AI use cases for professionals who assist job seekers, along with tools to think about how you could make the organizations you work with more efficient so that you could spend your time where it really matters with job seekers. So again, here are the 4 AI exposure tools that have come out in the past couple of months. And then I also shared a bunch of JFF resources. So we have 5 minutes left. Anything top of mind?
Hundreds of things.
Yeah.
It's just we don't have time to talk about it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Whoever wants to go first.
Would you have any recommendations with how to couple what you would call AI literacy with general workforce literacy?
Yeah, I think it's got to be embedded in the curriculum. I mean, it's like AI is just like we assume folks know how to use the internet. Like that's where we're getting to with AI. So I would certainly include a module. I would introduce these concepts of you are likely at some point in your career going to hear the words AI and potentially apply it. It takes a lot of different shapes. So again, showing them the range of AI, being able to distinguish generative AI is you give a prompt and it generates new content versus robotics versus the different variations of AI. So I think just making sure that workers understand what it is, and then using the Department of Labor's core competency framework, we think that covers the basics. but then it's customizing AI use based on sector or role that they're moving into and how it's going to be applied.
Where's ICCB in incorporating benchmarks into the rubrics, how AI can be utilized across the board in any type of curriculum? For example, there's really no AI credential. How are they incorporating that starting even in high school, but especially in ICCB?
That I can't speak to how they're specifically doing it. I do think there's like what we're seeing across the nation is like significant variation in terms of how schools are applying it. Like is it a standalone course or does it become integrated in every course? So like I think those are areas for exploration in terms of like what is the most effective approach. Is it a standalone credential that someone leaves with, or is it just assume that there is an AI layer to all learning at this point? And then what does that mean in terms of like going beyond the syllabus, giving the like guidelines on like how, ways to use AI or ways that are prohibited?
There is a question online. There's a couple. So someone asked earlier that you talked about states utilizing AI models and how Illinois is kind of lagging. And so they want to know what AI models are those states utilizing that Illinois is lagging on?
It's more of like taking a statewide approach to like understanding how AI is implemented along with workforce. If you Google, like Michigan had like recently came to attention, and like in talking with some folks a couple months ago at DCOE, like they were also looking at the Michigan model as a source of inspiration for Illinois.
Okay. And then the last question online is that you mentioned a DOL AI training. Do you have information on where that training is located?
If you Google DOL free AI training, I don't know, has anybody in this room tried it out? It's a text-based training. It's like the results are mixed. Like I think the pros are it's really accessible. It introduces AI. Whether or not it like really moves the needle on like preparing workers for AI in a job is a question mark. But yeah, I think if you do a Google of like free AI training from Department of Labor, it was I think last month or the month before that it came out with a big splash.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to say one more thing, that this session was being live streamed and recorded, so we had virtual attendees. I appreciate everyone using the microphone in the room. But if you want to refer back to anything that Jeff said, it is recorded and it will automatically be in the Hoove app as soon as we end this session today. So if you need to refer back to it, you can.
Great. Thank you all